and
Yeah.
things, but there's something else in it to make it sweet. And then there was, I think, strawberries. I
Yeah.
haven't made it yet.
Delicious.
Which is good. That's what I like about it. It's like,
Now, I had a perfect sausage to cheese ratio. You messed it up.
Okay. Well, who's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna get fired. You're
Don,
gonna
can you
get
hear
fired.
us?
No, there's not.
Don, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear. I can hear.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Don.
Hey, hello.
Just waiting to turn his camera on.
Don, I'm sending you the most current version of the budget the board has in front of them. Just got.
David, do you have a camera that you can turn on?
Yeah, I have the camera on.
It's got option A and B. on it.
You won't see him if I share my screen.
I don't need you to share your screen. Thank you.
Just got
Turn
both
his
options.
camera off again.
Okay, David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm gonna email David and Jim. Your cover sheet.
Just so Jim and David and Don know, we've got your pictures up on the screen. We're not going to put the, I don't know if we're going to put the spreadsheet up or not.
If I do, it'll kick them off.
For those of you in the audience, we have print copies. They're built for old people's eyes, Charles.
Not quite there yet.
As you pointed out. So we good to go? Okay, I'm going to call this workshop of the CROA Board of Directors to session. It is Tuesday, the 20th, and we are here to discuss budget. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
It has been.
Do we have a quorum?
You do.
We have, just for the record, we have all 6 board members here, so we do have a quorum. David and Jim are participating online. We also have Don Gilray from Grand Manors in Texas accounting with us, and we have Roger here with us as well. So that is the process. Just a quick note, and I assume we have some people online as well. This is a workshop, which means that it's a little less formal. But I do want to just say to the audience, the huge audience that we have, that while we're delighted to have you here and we welcome your participation, you are governed by the same rules that we are, which means that you don't get the opportunity to speak until you're called on, and you'll be limited in your speaking time. And we want to hear what you have to say, and the same is true for the people online. But we are still here to do the business of the association. Our purpose today is to go back. You might recall, was it a week ago? Is it only a week ago? We had a budget in front of us, and the budget was something that had some mistakes in the numbers, and the spreadsheets didn't quite work, and we had a lot of questions. And in the past week, Cindy and Bill have been working diligently with Roger and Don and Lauren and their team. And I want to thank all of you for putting this together. I appreciate that you produced a very large piece of paper for those of us here in the room that I can actually read. Bill? I'd also like to thank the Finance Committee Yes. for a lot of their efforts as well. Yeah, and we appreciate their work, their summaries, and we've gotten some correspondence from them, and we will deal with that in due time today. I think the best way probably to start this off would be to invite Lauren or Roger or Don to give us a high-level overview of this budget. We have 2 different forms of the budget. Just to overview that, one form of the budget calls for an increase that's larger than the other, and the difference for those of you that are watching or looking will be whether or not we want to reallocate dollars from the apartment recreation fee or dollars from the capital fund into an offset for the operating expense, which is what we're looking at here. This is not a budget for capital improvement, not a budget for necessarily for replacement reserves, although it includes those things, but it's really our operating budget that we're looking at. So everybody on the board understand we have two different documents here that we're looking at. Jim, David, are you guys?
I did not see that in the advanced reading of that. That was not clear at all.
Okay, so you have, David, I think you have a document that probably shows.
Well, moments ago, I just sent it to David and Jim.
Okay, so if you guys will check your emails.
Yeah, I cannot access email.
Okay.
I downloaded this yesterday, so that's what I'm working with. It was one file, one Excel file with CROA, summary, and CJC. Wi-Fi where I am is virtually unavailable.
Okay.
So that's
We'll
all
do our
I have.
best. David, we'll do our best to bring you in and give you the numbers, and if necessary, Lauren can throw them up on the screen for you as well. Okay.
And my screen is an iPhone.
Okay, so that's going to be tough to read. Okay.
Very.
Okay. Well, we'll do what we can. Jim, are you okay on numbers? You got documents in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
All right. All right. So with that, then let me turn it over to you, Lauren, or whoever you designate.
Yeah,
Okay, Roger.
I'm happy to jump in.
Okay.
So we took a bottom line approach. We took the great work that the committee had done, that Lauren and her team had done, that Brian had started, and we sort of combined and merged all of those efforts into one working document, which you have in front of you. We just paid special attention to our best guess estimate of 12-month projected. That was sort of the number that we wanted to estimate so that we could use that number as a good number, a foundational number, to then propose a budget number for that line item. I think if you looked at, we provided in the spreadsheet 2021 budget and actual 2022 budget projected, and then 2023 proposed. If you look at a lot of the categories, you'll see that 21 to 22, we put more detail, and then 22 to 23, we even put more detail. So an example of the more detail part of it. A good example would be for pool service. In prior years' budgets, all the pool expenses were put into one line item. For the 22 budget, we took that one line item and we put them in multiple line items for all of the service areas. For the 23 budget, we even took a deeper dive and we separated out the service contract, the chemicals, and then the estimated repairs. So the reason why we did that is the chemical number is a solid number based on the contract. The service is a solid number based on contract. So the what if number, or the best guess number for budgeting purposes, would be the pool repair number, right? So we took that same methodology and ideology on every single line item in the budget to really give us depth and detail for the purpose of projecting the proposed 2023 budget. So I think that's going to be the biggest change that you see, is we've added a bunch of new line items for the purpose of better tracking expenses in appropriate buckets, which only helps us get better and better year over year on the budgeting process. So
let me turn your attention to the executive summary.
yes.
Can we start there?
Yeah, sure. All right. So the executive summary, what I did is we, at the very top, it just gives you a historical perspective of full rate per lot amounts going back to 2017. And then same thing for trash per lot. In the summary, and David, you're the only one who doesn't have this, but in the summary, David, you have an an estimated 2023 assessment of 1160.79. And that is contemplating using half of the apartment rec fees. What you don't have in front of you that everyone else does, David, is option B, which would be $1,220, which contemplates not using any of the apartment rec fees. So that's the only difference that we have in front of us. So if the board,
So let me just be clear for everybody.
yes,
We're talking about a $60 a year per household difference in these two approaches.
yes,
Okay, so I know it's easy to get wrapped around the percentage axle, but these percentages are less instructive than looking at the actual dollars amount. So that means $60 more per household per year divided by 12 is $5 a month difference in these two options.
correct.
Celia, you're shaking your head.
I am.
Go ahead.
$5 is $5. It all.
I didn't say it wasn't anything. I just said it
shaking
was.
my head.
Fine, okay.
Any motion I make or anything, if
Okay,
I want to say something, I'll say it.
okay, great.
$5 is $5.
Okay, thank you. So the fundamental first question that I think we want to address is whether or not we want option A or option B. And then within those, everything else stays the same. The expenses are the same. It's
Correct.
simply how we allocate them. Is that a fair discussion to start with?
Mhm.
So let me go around the room, literally or metaphorically, and just get opinions about that as we start out. David, you want to weigh in first?
Well, I have a question before that. On the estimated lots on the first column, why does it go down by 50 in a 1-year period?
Yep, good question, David.
Are we declining in the number of homes?
No, the 4575 number was the best guess projection for 2022. I think we
Oh,
estimated or
with Island
guessed
Village.
that we guessed how many Island Village would close. The 4523 is the exact specific number we have right now. So we could bump that up if the board wanted to project or guess how many additional lots. So
Got it.
the 4523 is literally how many lots we have today.
And what we had in 2019 and 2018 was 4321.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So
All right, yes,
that's
David, you want to go ahead?
Hmm?
Go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
David.
that's very helpful. So my sense from our discussion of 2 weeks ago was, like, philosophically, it's my view that the apartments should pay their fair share, and the question is, what is that fair share? And then the other part is, where does it go? And in the correspondence when I had email was that I think we should think about a capital improvement amount rather than specifically allocate apartment fees to the capital improvements. In other words, all apartment fees go directly into the general fund, into our general expenditures, be my suggestion. And so if you go back to the choice of A and B, the one I have in front of me, I think is reasonable and appropriate. But I would allocate all of apartment fees into whatever is legally allowable, not just into the capital improvement fund as we've done in the past.
So this number.
Hold on, Cindy, can I hold 1 second? David, I don't follow your last statement. Are you saying that you want 100% of the apartment fees to go into the operating fund?
Into wherever we can legally put it. Yeah, I think apartment fees should be treated like a homeowner in the sense of access to facilities.
And we've just put in 50% of them,
Right.
haven't we?
Correct.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay. So you understand
And I-
that, David? This number is 50% right now.
I understand that, and I don't know why it needs to be limited to 50%.
Okay. All right. Let me go to Jim and then I'll come to Cindy. Jim?
I think I've a thought for this year and a thought going forward. Let me start with a thought going forward. It seems to me that the fund should be evenly, in my mind, evenly split between operating reserves and capital. So going forward. This year, I think, is an exception. We all know that. I personally would push for as much as possible, maybe even 100% of the apartment fees this year to lower the increase in the assessment.
Okay, Cindy?
Jim, did you just say that going forward, not necessarily this year, but going forward, you would be a proponent of taking those apartment fees and splitting them three ways? Is that what you said? Part to
Absolutely,
operating, part
yes.
to contingency, and part to reserves? Okay.
Yes, I did.
So just so I'm clear on what you were saying. Roger and I spent a lot of time really digging into these numbers and verify things like the number of units and all that kind of stuff. I really don't, and I think that we should, I didn't think about putting all the money that we could from apartment fees into this number. I would be all for that, because even though you said the two options that we're looking at is only $5 a month, overall, if we go with the lesser of the two options for being presented today, it's $94 again this year. Last year was $87. So in 2 years' time, that's quite a big bump up, in my opinion. I'd like to see it go down as much as we can. And if part of the solution is taking all those apartment fees and putting it in there, then, that will allow us some cushion too, I think. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
I go for the lower one, or
Okay.
prefer.
Celia?
I agree with whatever David and Jim said,
What about me?
and Cindy. I think those apartment fees, if it's gonna help lower the residents' funds that they have to pay out, they should come out of capital improvements and go into operating expenses and everything else that's associated with how to run this community. I think we have enough money in capital improvements. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about that in a minute, for
Right,
sure.
but are we going to discuss what the apartments are going to be paying? moving
Well, I'm
forward?
trying to get the concept first and then to drill down, okay?
Okay.
So if I don't get there, I'm sure you'll remind me.
I will, thank you.
Bill?
I think we should charge whatever we have to cover the shortfall in the budget. The shortfall in the budget is based on inflation. I'm very worried about taking money out of a capital fund. I don't think it's ever been done. It's a precedent I'm not comfortable with, because the capital fund is there for capital reasons. And all that does is we do it this year and there's an inflation next year, which we can reasonably assume. Are we going to then take it out of capital funds again? And if so, how much, and how much are we going to be literally picking the pocket of the capital fund, which sooner or later comes back to bite somebody, whether it's 5 years or 10 years out, because those capital funds need to be used to replace stuff.
No, that's replacement,
Well, that's replacement funds.
Right.
Yeah, that's different, right.
Repair stuff.
that's.
But
yeah.
either way, whatever we're going to be repairing, we need to have the money for it. And if we get to a place where we have to replace roofs or something, and we've been taking the money out of capital, where do we go? We go back, all of a sudden there's a bigger bump rather than a gradual bump, which is, closer to inflation.
That's reserve funds,
That's
that's
another
not
pot.
capital improvements. Capital improvements is for new projects, not
Like
repairs.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I think those are two different things. All right,
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
What, I'm sorry, no, I'm not sorry, but the rec fees that go into capital funds now, if we take them out, the fees that you get when you sell a home that you have to pay half to the foundation and half to town, that will still be going into capital funds.
Right. But it is
Capital
it's the
improvement.
smaller part of that
Right.
fund. So everybody else has weighed in. I'm opposed to this transfer for two reasons. One is I agree with Bill. I think it's a bad precedent. I think if it costs us more money to run the association, let's tell the owners that that's the cost. And, we're adults and we're grown-ups, and I think we can acknowledge that if we have to cut expenses to balance our budget, then we cut expenses, but you don't hide what you're doing. what we're doing here is, and this is where, I got into it with Mr. Kirby last week. This is a shell game. This is moving money from one place to another so that we keep a percentage low and we say, we're not raising your assessments. And I agree with you, Cindy. We have had to raise assessments, but if you look at that same sheet, we raised assessments in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 by virtually nothing. So for years, this assessment didn't change. It is still dramatically less than what comparable communities around the country charge with similar amenities. And secondly, we don't know at this point, at least I don't, what the lot D, the Delta lot project is going to cost us, the pickleball paving. David, you and I have talked about this previously. If that number is X, we might say, you know what, we're not going to do that. And if the number is manageable, then we say yes. But we are assuming that all of that comes out, and it will come out of our capital fund. If you take 50% of the apartment rec fee out, or 100% of the apartment rec fee out, you are basically strangling our capital funds down the road. And Jim, you're shaking your head no. Go ahead.
Well, that's why I started out the way I did, because I think I am personally questioning the original decision to put all of that into the capital fund. So if you start there, then yes, Bill, you're pulling it out. But if we reconsider it and say, just like all of our funds, they're spread across all three of those buckets. Let's spread this across all three of those buckets. If you look at the numbers too, we have $200,000 more this year than we did last year on those two together. So I think now is probably a good time to do this.
Are you talking about the capital fund, Jim?
Yeah, the capital fund was 900 and some thousand last year. Now in this budget, it's 1.1 million.
So if we had a $1 million pickleball lot D expense, and that's just a made up number, don't get freaked out. If that is our number, we are essentially drawing that capital fund down to zero just for that one project.
Again, I am saying let us, and I may be the only one who believes this and wants this, but let us revisit where these apartment funds, because the amenities are not only to build new amenities, but to operate the amenities and repair the amenities. So why wouldn't you divide it up into each of the three buckets? So if you start there, if we make that decision, let's see where we land. And then I think personally, just me again, this year, because of all that's gone on, I think we should make an exception, and maybe it's the reserve money that we bring over. If the capital money is a big deal.
Legally, we can't do that, but other things. Let me hold for a second. Celia, go ahead.
So you said if we go with $1 million pickleball project, we'll have nothing left. But as of July 31st, 2022, we have $2,652 in capital.
I was just using Jim's numbers. I'm sorry. I was just using.
So then if we used $1 million for pickleball, we'd still have $1.6 million left. We wouldn't.
Yeah, $1.1 million is what's projected to go into capital in this next year from both of those sources. Which one of them is the apartment fees?
All right. Other comments from the board, David?
Yeah, I agree with Jim's point. First one and the second one about looking at the three buckets. I would not defer that for the next year. I would go ahead with that now. And so those three buckets, and we decide what is fair. But I also agree with Bill, let's not set a precedent of moving things from capital improvements. I would argue, and I know it's a separate discussion, is what is our estimated, or what would we want to have as our minimum capital improvement contribution each year? If we reconfigure the rental piece, what would be the minimum capital improvement? Generally, it's been on the order of just under $1 million to $1 million, and now reported at 1.1. I think and we started last year with the 25,000 in the budget, which I see is still the same. I think that owners' contributions to capital improvements should, we put in what we need as an expense, as a contribution there for the future. And that becomes part of our budget, that we don't get into, as you said, Jackson, we don't get into a shell game. What our expenses are is what our expenses are, but we make a commitment for capital improvements, ballpark $1 million a year. And we don't take out of existing capital improvement funds to balance a budget or lower costs.
All right, any other comments from the board before I open to the, Bill?
Yes, in the memo that came from the Finance Committee, they basically say there should be a plan for this and a policy going forward, and we should have a 5-year plan, not a totally unusual number, 5-year plan, that we would then be able to look at what we plan to do with the money. Now, granted, 4 or 5 years out, we may not even know what that project is, but we at least have something to rely on, and certainly a policy for future discussions like this.
Yes.
And at the moment, as I understand it, we need to get some sort of budget published by the 1st of October per covenant. So I'm not sure we're gonna have time to get the policy discussion going into future years before the preliminary budget goes out.
Yeah, I don't think we are. I think what will happen is on the 28th, we will approve a budget to be sent out, and I think it will either be, with some modification, will be Plan A or Plan B here. I mean, that's fundamentally where I think we are at this moment, unless anybody disagrees on the board. Those are the two options in front of us. One option would take the assessment at $1,160 per household per year. The other would be $1,220. So those are the two basic choices. Cindy?
Roger, could you quickly calculate what it would do to the payment if we did not transfer the money from the capital fund, but moved over the entire amount of the apartment fees?
100% of apartment.
Mm-hmm. And no movement from capital?
We're just taking the
S&Gs.
apartment fees, not the, yeah.
Just for the, maybe a one-time shot for this year. To help bring the payments down.
Okay, while he's doing that, let me open this up for any comments from either people here in the audience or online. Anyone? Charles, go ahead. Go ahead, just come up here. Yeah, it's probably just easier.
Charles Richards, 1020 Banks Row Street. Can we go back, Bill? I think you said inflation was what was driving the shortfall in the budget for 2022, correct?
It's one of the reasons.
Well, what
I
project?
can't hear clearly.
Sorry. You were saying inflation is driving the shortfall in the budget, correct, for 2022? Is
On the expenses down at the bottom, in the executive summary, it shows all the different things that have gone up. Some of them have gone up for inflation, certainly. Others have gone up because we're fully staffed for the first time. Some of them are uncontrollable, such as water charges and things like that. But at the bottom, it shows all the different expenses. Landscape's gone up dramatically. So some of that's embedded with inflation, but some of it's increased labor costs, increased services.
Yeah, so I think what's
Services.
right.
Yeah, go ahead, let him speak.
Yeah, so I think what's been happening, obviously, the scope of projects, the pace of projects, right, for 2022 with maintenance and what have you has increased, right? And so naturally we have to take on that cost. I think what's interesting is that what concerns me, I do think it is a shell game when you start taking CapEx and you start taking apartment rec fees. We just need to take it on the chin here, in my opinion. But also by that same token, what I haven't seen in workshops or in the finance committee meetings is looking at the expenses line by line and where can we trim back. I'm not saying special events, but look at these holistically and where can we potentially peel back. And I haven't seen that yet in any of these conversations. So I would encourage you to maybe look at that.
That's what's coming, with all these pretty colors.
I mean, I think that's going to be, I'm excited to see that because I think that's where we need to get to the next step. So
Yeah, thanks. And let me just explain conceptually what happened here and why we're in this position. historically, for 4.5, 5 years, Brian created a budget, and he created a budget that we would call top-down. That is, he started with a target increase amount and said, in order to hit that increase amount, what numbers do I need to put into this budget? That was his particular approach, and we're grateful, as we've said, to his work and to him for his work. There is a very different approach to budgeting, which is bottom-up, where you build it line by line, item by item, and then you come up and you say, what is that number when you get done? We are at the apex of two competing models here, one of which we no longer have its prime advocate to sit here and explain why that number and not another number. That is a challenge. And if anybody thinks that we're able to do this easily, you're delusional. We are dealing with two very different structures of the budget. And so what Roger has done, and the staff and Cindy and Bill, is to try and build a bottom-up budget and then make it fit somehow into this top-down budget. Going forward, I think I would agree with Charles that we should be building a bottom-up budget. I think it is not great policy to say, here's a number and we're going to shoehorn everything into this particular number. It's an arbitrary number. Why 16%? Why not 17 or 18? The answer was CDD ended up at 16%. There was a view that we didn't want to be above that. That may be right, may be wrong, but it's a weird way to budget. It's just it's a policy political decision. So I think that's part of what goes on. Cindy, you've got a comment, and then we got a comment online.
So,
And Jim.
just for S and Gs, when we got the first iteration of the budget, it was started out as 20 and then 60 and some percent. I asked Town Hall to send me, they sent me the actual assessments from 2001 forward. And then I looked up the CPI increases from then until now. And actually, had we been building the budget to reflect those CPI increases, we would be paying $34.59 more than those 16 or 20, I don't remember which one I looked at.
Yeah.
So
we didn't keep up with inflation, is what you're saying.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
And that
just
was
for
it.
informational.
And that was the decision. Let me go to Jim, and then I'll get you here.
I just want to be clear, when I talk about inflation, I'm not talking about that personally being the reason for the deficit, for the increased cost this year. I'm talking about that in terms of homeowners and what's impacting them. I believe from my discussions with management that a majority of the increase has to do with us bringing Celebration back up to the standards that previous boards and previous management companies had not done in the previous years. And once we then bring them up to that standard, keeping them up to that standard obviously is going to be additional dollars as well. So from my perspective, that's what's driving the shortfall, if you will. But I see that as different from how we approach the homeowners and the increase on the homeowners. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Thank you,
Andrew.
Gary. That's good. And then we'll get to you, Andrew. I see your hands up.
Gary Upper, 1471 Resolute Street. I'm in favor of a bottom-up budget because it's realistic. If you know what the costs are based on your contracts and current expenses, you can project very carefully for 1 year ahead. However, I do want to bring up something else. In March 2020, the residents voted in a change to the bylaws, which request, actually it's no request, it said the board shall include without limitation preparation and adoption of a 3-year budget. I know it's hard to predict more than a year in advance, but that's what our bylaws say because we thought it would be good to think ahead so you would have a budget to look for the future. So my question is, where's our 3-year budget?
I helped write that and I didn't think we met it.
It's too late.
The residents voted it in.
We're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Andrew. Andrew, can you hear us?
Hey, Jackson. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll be quick. I just wanted to voice agreement with Jim and others who said that we should potentially revisit that original decision to send all of the funds to the capital budget. And I wanted to respectfully disagree with characterizing it as a shell game. I think if we were reappropriating money that was already in the capital fund, one could make that argument. But I think what we're talking about is changing how we allocate future funds. And I think kind of intuitively, it makes sense that we have all of the expenses in one budget. You'd want some of the revenue in the same budget to go against it. So we could certainly debate what the percentage is and what the right amount is. But from my perspective, if it's all been getting allocated to the capital fund, you could almost argue that the residents have been overburdened for the last few years. And so anything that we did now that was a larger percentage could potentially be a correction. And I wouldn't even necessarily think of that as a shell game. So just wanted to voice that. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you for the
And I
time.
appreciate that. I'm using shell game less pejoratively and more to be descriptive of the fact that we're moving money around that doesn't reflect our full cost. But I appreciate what you're saying about the owners may have been overburdened over past years. We have any other, yeah, Bill?
Just want to drift back to the bottom-up method.
Yeah.
That is pretty much the industry standard. You start with what I call reality, last year's numbers. That's what it cost us to run everything. And we use that as a basis. And we say, well, is there going to be more or less of that? Do we think it's going to cost more for that? And each line item gets adjusted, which I believe is what I've seen here. The top down, and I've done both methods a lot, but the top down is really when you don't have a place that exists. You know, it's a brand new property and you don't have a history to build off of. And even there, you look at existing properties that are similar. And fitting it into the number, I've seen that done by developers where they want to make it work because they got to go to the bank and show a cash flow, and gotten away with it a few times, but it always comes back to bite them down the road because they can't change the reality of costs. So bottom up is definitely the way to go, and is the way everybody else does it.
Can I ask, Roger, were you able to come up with a number? If we,
100%.
if we don't take anything.
1101 per year,
11,
per year, 3.11% increase. So it drops from 9 to 3%.
So that's if we take all the apartment fee income for 2023 and move it into operating, but do not take any money from our capital fund.
right, just at all. What's there is there. It just stays. It's all new income that won't be going in. So that would only be a 3% increase
Yes.
to the residents. That's good.
It's not good.
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm entitled to an opinion
You
as well.
are, but
I'm
that
entitled to an
means
opinion as well.
you are.
I'm letting everyone share their opinion, but I'm just going to say that is, I think, misleading. Yeah, I think it does not truly reflect the cost of running the association. And I think that ultimately you are draining the potential ability in the capital fund. If we think we're going to do a development here at 851 or Lakeside or the theater or anything with pickleball, those funds are going to be out of capital, and that fund will diminish even with the remainder. If we put nothing from apartment fees in this year, we get an improvement in the capital fund in transfer fees of how much, Roger?
600,000.
408 is what we're projecting.
408,000. So we have
That's not
then,
right. That's not right.
no, David, you're shaking your head also.
No, I just think it's foolish to do that. That's living for today. I agree with 100% with what you just said, Jackson. It's living for today and not preparing for tomorrow. I believe that we need to put money into capital improvement intentionally today, whether it's from apartments or from the homeowners.
So
We don't have to set a policy now per Bill's comment from the finance committee, but we can make a declaration for today. We can say we're gonna budget $1 million towards capital improvements for 2023. I mean, something like that.
Okay, let me go to Celia and then Cindy.
So how many homes are left to be sold in Island Village?
The proposed budget contemplates a capital improvement assessment or contribute to the capital fund, 408,000. That's assuming 350 resales and 100 Island Village lots closed in 2023. So 450 sales.
Right, so you're looking at all the homes in all of Celebration.
Yeah, it's an assumption, so we
Right.
don't know, it could be
So-
less, it could be more.
We're looking at $500,000. That'll bring us up to $3 million in our capital improvements. The only project we really have on the table that is pretty close to near done is pickleball. Everything else is not a priority right now. And in a year from now, we'll accumulate more money. But in the meantime, it's all about lowering the assessments for the residents who are struggling. There's people struggling in the community, and $5 is $5, and another $5 is another $5. It's about helping our residents. It is a business, but we're not building an apartment complex here. These are residents. This is their money we're talking about. So if we can lower their rate, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Not worrying about projects down the line that don't even exist.
Okay, Cindy?
The reason I perked up when I got this number from Rogers 1101 is he and I went through, Charles, each line item here, line by line by line, which put us in a position of, let's see what we can cut to increase revenue. If we start from this number, then it will be more of a, okay, now let's look at this again. Should we maybe pad this expense a little bit? Just to make sure that we don't cut off our nose to spite our face moving on. I would rather start with this number and then maybe,
Which number?
we don't,
Which
the
number?
1101 with a 3% increase, knowing that as we go through here, maybe we can leave special events as it is and not ask Liz to, instead of hiring a $35,000, and these are numbers that actually came from their thing, a $35,000 performer for Christmas, maybe we look for a $20,000 reporter, performer. I would rather start this low number, look at the expenses, and see if we, need to ratchet it up a little bit to put a cushion in, rather than trying to cut more fee. That's
Okay, thank you. Let me ask one question. Did the finance committee weigh in with a recommendation on this? John, I know you're here for this.
So ironically, I've never missed a finance committee meeting until this Friday out of conflict, but I did read some comments. The comments was 50%. They advocated 50% this year, and then establishing a policy. I've kind of kept quiet. I'll try to speak loud. My big thing is I am a finance guy. One of the things we really need to do is get a CapEx schedule going for what we want to do in the next few years, and that's basis for driving all the other things. Personally, I have opinion. I love the idea of finally, we call it the precedents, but I don't really consider it as precedents. I don't know if there was a solid policy before how we got there, but we have become a very large community with lots of amenities. And the marginal benefit of each amenity, I'm not saying pickleball is worth less or more. I'm a proponent for pickleball, but the marginal benefit sometimes decreases. So what we have to do is kind of be adept and shift. I think there is a need to basically reallocate part of those apartment fees towards operational costs. We just can't keep on building. We're running out of land, and you're basically, as everybody has already said, I think kind of shifted the burden a little bit to the homeowners in lieu of the ability to build up your capital expense fund. The fact that it's been building up, I know there was COVID, is indicative that there's something not necessarily aligned properly. I don't know how to say it any better than that, but I would advocate as a finance committee member, the 50%.
Okay.
Jackson,
Bill?
I don't think there was an actual poll at the meeting on Friday. But if I had to say consensus, what comments were made would be what John was saying, that they were more in favor of the 50-50 split than not.
Okay, so I think where we are at this point is that we probably need to poll the board as to option A or B, and then start to drill down if it's option A, what that dollar amount transfer would actually look like. Is that fair,
Yeah.
Bill?
I got one more comment.
Yeah.
I agree that there's certainly a constituency of residents who want to keep their fees at the lowest possible amount. And there may be people that are going to have some financial struggle with any fee increase. But from a board perspective, we also have people knocking at the door saying, what about this? We want you to build this. We want to build that. And my personal view is we have to find a medium place where we're satisfying as many people as possible. And I get concerned about underfunding capital when there may be other projects coming down the road and we won't have a way to do them. Despite the fact that we are running out of projects, there aren't that many places to go and what to do. But I would rather have a middle place than not at all.
Let me go to Gary and then I'll come back to the board.
Just a question for those of us who got lost. Could you quickly summarize option A and option B?
Option A is an increase to $1,160.79 a year per home. Option B is $1,220.48 per year per home.
And the driving difference?
The driving difference is whether or not you transfer the apartment recreation fees or not.
Okay.
Half the revenue.
Half of them. Cindy?
Okay, the more we talk about this and the discussion we had about the bottom-up budget, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we've discussed this, but now I think we move to this line by line stuff. Go down line by line. He can make changes, right, as we go through, and then see what we come up with.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong, Cindy, but I think conceptually, at least for my brain, I'd like to know if we're headed towards one of these numbers or the other. And then I think we have to do the line by line, either way, right? Whether we went for option A or B. Yes,
I have a few comments if that's okay.
yes. Who's talking?
Jim,
Oh, you're frozen. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
just can't get off those.
There you
So
go.
I have a few items. One is I don't want to choose between those two options. I want to add the third option that we talked about, and I want to choose between those three options. That's number
Tell
one.
us again your third option. Tell us again your third option.
The third
Can you talk
option
about my option?
is what Cindy talked about and had Roger calculate.
You're talking about the 1101 number?
3%.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. So you're saying 1101 is option C.
which results in a 3% increase. At the same time, and I don't think we can do it this year, but I also think we need to kind of keep ourselves on both sides, right? So I think it's from a fairness standpoint, it should go into thirds. We can change those percentages if we want, but I think from a fairness, it should go in there. On the opposite side, I think from a fairness position, we should potentially have, at least as guidance, the minimum increase needs to be around the COLA or index that shows that prices are increasing. So at the risk of complicating even more, I'd like to bring up that idea as well, whether that's part of this budget discussion or whether we discuss that further down the road in another meeting is fine with me.
All right. So no matter what one of these options we're talking about, the budget currently that's being proposed is $5,520,000, $251.38, correct? Everybody agree with that? So it's really a question of how we're allocating that number before we get to Cindy's point about bottom up, which would affect any of those once we've made the.
Yeah, I have a quick question about that. Of the 5.2 million, how much are we contractually obligated at this point of that 5.2? Do we know?
Well, CROA expenses are 5.2, CJC is 1.8.
No. In other words, we have contracts in place that we have committed to pay vendors.
Yeah.
How much of
Some
the
of that's-
5 million is that?
Jim, there's in the notes column, in the detail portion, a lot of the contracts are noted, so I
Okay.
can't try to do a sum real quick, but you can skim through and see which ones are contract based.
I just,
I think it's safe to say most of them are contractual. I mean, we have a lot of fixed expenses here. We're not going to be able to change the cost of water, for example. We're not really able to do a whole lot about insurance. It's what the insurance company charges us, correct? We have, we may have some flexibility around certain items, but they tend to be smaller dollar number items. But before we get there, I'm just trying to get us conceptually to the bigger picture of how we want to allocate these apartment fees, because I think that starts the process for us. Celia,
That
agree?
will help us decide, yeah. moving forward.
All right. Mike, you want to weigh in on any of this?
Sure.
We asked what the finance committee's view was with respect to the allocation of the apartment recreation fees. We have the memo from the committee. John indicated that, and Bill said there was no formal vote, but there was a sense of having a longer term plan, but there was a general sense of moving some of those dollars back into the operating funds. Is that an accurate statement? Okay, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry I'm late.
Sorry.
Had a dog emergency. Yeah, I think John's captured that correctly. The one thing that I did do that was put out a note to the committee that I called it fact-based thinking, and I don't know if that got to the board.
I don't think that's.
No, so they didn't send that, okay. That was probably the most important thing. So if you're gonna do this and put some apartment funds into the cost of assessments, what does that do to your capital fund? What does the future look like then?
Right.
And what is that over the next year? What is that over the next 5 years?
Right.
That was a discussion from the committee, that we need a 5-year capital plan
Right.
to really look at what the inflows and the outflows are, how many projects we might have. And I think the committee's opinion is that it's going to be a lower number. So the need is not going to be that great as it was 5 or 6 or 8 years ago. So I did a little chart, and I can have this copy and give it to you.
Give it to.
You got it there?
I can put it up here.
Put up on the board. There you go.
Can you put it up so that I can
Can
read
you get
it?
it bigger?
Is that what you just?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to walk up here, okay?
Yeah, sure.
So here I looked at 2 funds, the capital fund and the operating fund. So dealing with the capital fund first, if you have questions, stop me. The balance on July 31st was $2,757,440. So that's just the raw balance, okay? And then the apartment fees, if you go at 50%, the apartment fees that'll come in, oh no, I'm sorry. These are the apartment fees for the rest of the year. So we've got this stub period from now till the end of the year. So these are the ones that haven't been booked yet. So it's just taking the year to date through 7 months and subtracting from the total projected. So that's going to add another $195,000. The capital assessment is going to add another $270,000. That's the stub period, okay? So then at the end of the year, December 31st, 2022, this is, we're going to head into the next year budget. The capital fund will have $3.2 million in it. Okay, so that's a balance that you're at. Next year, if you go at a 50% apartment rate, that would add $284,500. Okay. I'm pausing.
No, it's good.
Okay. And the capital assessments were at $521,000.
And that's the home transfer fee.
Correct. And that, Roger, you had that in there at 350 times the 1,000, whatever I saw in the form.
Yeah,
I think that's supposed to be 400 probably.
450 is the estimated total. 350 of traditional resales and 100 new Island Village.
Where's that other 100 new in there? I couldn't see that in the formula.
It was 450 times.
Are you calculating Island Village Apartments in this also?
Mike, was your question about the 100 flats that they're going to be pulling? Is that what the question was?
No.
That was-
No.
I stand corrected. Your number is correct. Yep, mine, you must have missed that, Cindy.
Well, I think I still think this is your number here, I think. Well, this was from the Friday, this is from the Friday run, the Friday pass.
That's a good number.
Okay,
Yep.
that's the 521. That's from the Friday pass. Okay. So 521. So those are additions to the capital fund from the starting point. Then you have one expenditure that's really scheduled. That's Lot D. And I just put Lot D in there at $1 million because I think it's going to cost that. The dog park costs us $800,000. This is going to cost us $1 million standing up any day.
Okay.
So that's a subtraction. So then where you are, your point at the end of the year is $3,028,000. So you've had enough inflow at a 50% rate on the apartments and everything else to easily cover this, pretty much put you right back where you were in the previous year. Now, the next step in this is, okay, what do those inflows need to be looking out? And what projects do we have to do? And those are pretty nebulous and everything else, but that would be good financial planning to do that, right? That would give you a capital plan. But the question from a capacity standpoint, if you want to put 50% of the apartment fees into the funding, you can do it very easily from my perspective. The other thing you got to think about is the operating fund. We've got $2 million. We've got a $200,000 loss incremental that's going to occur between now and the end of the year. We've lost $190,000 so far this year. I figured another 200. The pass you just did was at 409,000 or something like that. So figure 200 for round numbers. That's the remaining loss. So that'd take your balance down to 1,882. We're planning break even next year, so we'd be at the same spot there. So your operating
Explain the break even number for me.
In the budget we're doing, no matter what decision you make here, you're going to go for break even. So there'll be no erosion on the fund
on the
as long as we hit budget.
Right.
As long as we hit budget.
Okay.
So it'll be preserved.
Okay. So let's assume we didn't move any apartment fees into operating. What happens to the far right-hand column, the operating fund column, if we don't move any of the apartment fees?
Well, if we don't move anything in there,
Yeah.
we budget for a break even. I think we budget for a break even. If you don't use those, right now, the numbers that Roger has run has 284,000 in there. So if you don't use that, then you're going to have a shortfall.
A bigger break even number?
Yeah, unless you change some other numbers, you're going to have a $284,000 loss.
Okay. And so to cover that, that's why we've got a higher assessment for next year, if we had to do it that way. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It'd be higher than the whatever you've got, yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Questions? Celia?
So we're talking about the apartment fee. Have we discussed about raising the apartment fees?
That's a different discussion, I think.
Well, it's a different discussion. If we're going to raise the apartment fees,
Well, it's a
then
formula.
it'll help us decide.
It's a contractual formula. It's more complicated. I don't mean to dismiss this, but it's more complicated than we are going to be able to go to today. There is a legal agreement about how those fees are calculated. And it would require, I believe, going back and re-signing agreements with every apartment owner and the celebration company. That's the agreement from 1996, fairly significant agreement. So it's not impossible, but it's not going to happen today, and it's not going to happen before this budget gets sent out. That's my view. It's just more complicated.
That's right.
So I understood everything you were saying as you were saying it, but in a nutshell, what are you saying?
I'm saying, I think I said it at the end, but I'll say it again. I'm saying you can put 50% of the apartment fees into the operating fund without any problem whatsoever, and you're not going to put you in any danger in your capital fund.
Okay, so
So
don't
rather
move
than
any
putting-
money from the capital fund, but if we move 50% of the apartment fees, we should be good.
Correct. You're in good
Or
shape.
right where we,
Yeah.
And just to put that in context, that is option B on your summary sheet.
Yeah, should-
Option C
No,
was
that's
to,
option A.
I'm sorry, it's option A, forgive me. Option C would take 100% of the apartment recreation fees and do the same calculation. Hey, Matt, would take the same calculation and put it in there. And so you would reduce that apartment fee for the capital fund by 200. Well, you're doing it right now. Okay.
But that's down.
You'd be down to 2.7 million, am I correct?
yes.
And then that would be used to offset your break even on the operating fund, am I correct?
No, you're gonna break even over here. You're gonna plan for break even over here, so you're not gonna have any.
But your assessment would be less because you're taking more.
Correct.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same understanding here.
When you move the apartment fund fee back and forth, it's a pass-through. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
The only number it's gonna change is the assessment.
Okay,
Everything else in the P&L stays the same. It just changes the assessment, which changes the revenue. Expenses stay the same. You're still a break even.
okay. Do David or Jim have any questions? I can't see them, so I don't want to leave them out here. David, Jim, do you have anything to ask? Go ahead,
No,
David.
I think it sounds from what Mike's saying, sounds like option A is the way to go, and it keeps a good balance, ongoing balance, at least in the near future, for the capital improvement. That's how I hear it.
So,
Okay.
so I have a question. Is this something that the finance committee is recommending going forward? That it's 50-50 or just for this year?
The finance committee's recommendation was to do it for this year and then to do a further study for the next 5 years of the capital plan to see if
Okay.
it was sustainable.
Okay,
So we want, it goes back to making fact-based decisions. That's why I put this chart together. We need to have that same type of chart the best we can for the next 5 years and then decide at one time.
that makes
Okay.
sense, Mike. Thanks for putting that together.
All right, Celia, and then we're gonna,
So I'm just trying to understand, so we have $2.8 million now in capital improvements. If we put from just the house sales, not direct fees, back into capital improvements, deduct the $1 million for pickleball, we're still gonna have well over $2 million left in capital improvements.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really in our near future that's gonna require $2.2 million within the next 3 years. It's like, we need to,
Well, that's a decision that hasn't been made.
well, it hasn't been made yet, but there's really nothing that's a priority right now.
Well, none of it's ever a priority. These are all optional development projects. Whether we build pickleballs, it's a priority to people that
But
want
we're
to play
trying to
pickleball.
save the residents some money here, not worry about in 3 years what we're gonna build.
Well, but I think what the bottom line is, like Mike said, realistically, we only have so much land. There's only so many more things that we can build.
But that doesn't mean we should still throw away our capacity.
Right.
I think there's a balance. There's a balance there.
okay,
So
so
can you
what I'm gonna,
borrow, so can you borrow from operating expenses if you have a capital improvement project that comes up in 2 years from now?
From operating expense balance, sure, you can move money back and forth. It's
Okay.
fungible.
But the only thing is, like, if we talk about this building and redoing this building, that comes out of replacement. That
no, it
doesn't
does
go-
not. It does not.
Not-
If we add on at the back of this building, Celia, that is a capital fund.
The building is already in existence.
Does not matter. It's new construction and it's capital. If we're repairing the HVAC, that's replacement funds. And that's been pretty clearly explained to us. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No.
No, okay. Charles,
I just have a quick question. So obviously the housing market,
you're gonna have to take off the mask. We just can't hear you.
the housing market obviously has been slowing down. So when you're looking at CapEx and the home sales, what have you been looking at? Has it been a year back or the last 6 months? And are we confident that that's going to generate?
300 has been the solid budget number that CROA has used, and what I understand the foundation uses that number as well.
6 years.
And we have exceeded that number almost every year.
It's a conservative.
Every
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a pretty conservative number. So I think
Because by doing that, if you're taking 50% right,
Yeah, I think we're pretty
redirecting,
conservative.
then
All right, I
the
want
market is slowing down.
to bring this to a head unless there's any final
Well,
comments.
just to your question, Charles, after Debbie made the comment about the MLS at the last meeting, Debbie McDonald, I asked one of our a founding residents who's a realtor, the information that Debbie alluded to. She said that so far, in 2021, we sold in celebration 510 homes, condos, townhomes. Year to date, we've sold 290. Her estimate for the end of 2022 is 400 homes sold. And she said, with interest rates going higher, it's been slowing down a bit. There might be an influx. Snowbirds coming and buying. And she said, as far as 2023, she'd estimate between 400 to 500 homes.
Okay.
Just to- yeah.
Utilizing.
I just want to make one other point. The option A, I think you're calling it, and that's the 8%.
Yes.
And Jim talked about an option that maybe it'd go to 3%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the committee, I'll speak for the committee, and there's two other people here that can speak too. I think we would like to see the 8% because we think that makes most sense for this interim year. And it's in line with where the CPI is running right now and everything else, and people are expecting those kind of numbers. So to underbuy it to 3%, I think would be overly aggressive. To take it up to 16, I think would not be correct either. So that's how we kind of arrived at the 8%, I think. And that Roger was the one putting the fees in.
All right.
It was just because you missed this part of the discussion, that I asked Roger to calculate that what ended up to be the 3%, because when we went through this line by line, we cut to the bare bones on expenses, which put us in a position where now we're looking for revenue. If we start at this 1101, then we go back and look at the expenses and say, did we cut ourselves too close here? You know, maybe we should put in a little bit of cushion because we don't know what the new bid is going to be on the landscaper that we know we're going to have to hire. And then maybe ratchet up and try to cap it at around this original 8%.
That's the give and take.
Yeah. So that was my thought process between my recommendation here.
So what I want to do, thank you, Mike, I appreciate it, it's very helpful. What I'd like to do is poll the board. We're not going to take a vote. We're just going to poll the board on option A, B, and C so that we have some idea of what to put in front of us on the 28th for an action item. So I'm going to start with you, David. Option A is
A.
11.
A.
A, okay. Jim, option A, B, or C?
Yeah.
Jim,
Jim, you're muted.
you're muted. Jim, we can hear you.
And you're frozen. So you can't read your lips.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I am going to do rank voting. My preference is for C. I'm willing to compromise on A. I will not vote for B.
Okay. Cindy?
I vote for C.
C? Celia?
Sing.
Bill?
Refresh my memory on the alphabet.
Yeah, A is the $1,160, B is $1,220, and C is $1,101.
A's the 50%.
That's what's confusing, because we were talking 50% so long.
B is 0% and C is 100%.
Perfect.
Bill, we're up to you.
I like B.
Like B. Okay. And I like B as well. But I think where we stand then is there's still no.
So David's at A, Cindy and Celia are at C. Jim is C, A, and B, and you have two at B. So C.
It sounds like C is got what, 2 plus?
2.5.
While understanding that we may end up more at the 1160. But like I said, this puts us in a position where we can work up. Yeah, work up and maybe not cut
Well,
ourselves.
but to be clear, what you're saying with option C is that we're saying we're going to move 100% of these apartment recreation fees into the operating budget. That is not what the finance committee has
But
recommended.
they also, Mike just clearly said that if we need money, we can get the money if we need in the future out of operating costs.
Yes, but
That's all that
the
said. I said
Right,
you can move money.
right, you can
It's
move money.
fungible,
Right,
but the operating fund is limited in terms of the
Right.
reserve we need
Right.
for the expenses.
right.
So you
But
can't
it's not
just go
like-
raid that. It's not
Right.
what you try to do.
Mhm. Got it, I'm sorry. Just to make sure I got you right.
So-
I would be willing to revisit in light of this and move my polling decision to A. If it's not going to be B, I would rather it be A than
What is
C.
B, Jackson? What is
And
B?
Jack-
B is the
Jackson.
original port, it's the $1,220. It's not moving any of the apartment fees over. Okay.
So
And-
Jackson.
Yeah.
Go
Go ahead.
No, I would say the same thing. I'd be willing to move to B if it helps move things along. I do not support C at all. So I'm an A with a B as an option.
So it seems to me that the only compromise position that can get a majority is A.
Yeah, I think A is the only one that's gonna get a majority here.
That's 50%, right?
That's 50%. My suggestion would be that we bring the A number, which is $1,160.79, or an 8.7% increase, into the September 28th meeting. That's the budget, then that's the premise in which we would then work on our budget. And then for the balance of today, we do a line by line. Is that acceptable to every member of the board?
Yeah.
I'll just poll. David, is that acceptable to you?
Yes. Yes.
Jim, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it is as a compromise.
Okay, Cindy?
What if we do it line by line, this,
Well,
They
I'm
change.
gonna take this approach first. And then we can go line by line, but we need a structure. We need some, I think, guidelines as to where we want to be. Is that acceptable or not? I'll take your word, whatever you want to say. I just want to hear. If no, say no.
well,
I'm okay with that. I just want to get a sense of where we are.
Then we're just gonna
If-
have to
if we're-
scratch off things as we go down the
and I go
line.
back to my original comment. You know, sure, we can shoot for this, but
We know it's gonna go up.
But if we go by this line by line, it's gonna change, so we go through all this work of going up line by line, and it comes higher, lower, whatever, and then we have to go through, you understand what I'm trying to say? Then we have to go through it again.
Yeah, I'm asking, do we want to move 50% of the apartment recreation fees into the operating budget? That's really the question in front of us.
Jackson,
Yes.
can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
I appreciate the fact that the group wants to go through line by line and look at every line and feel good about them and make changes. I would tell you that that's probably not a great exercise. You know, I looked at it pretty close. I look for the anomalies and the things that really stand out, the mistakes. That 25,000 should still be positive, not
I
negative.
changed it, yep.
Okay, great. I really got it. I didn't see it yet. So that's what I look for, is things like that. And those you can catch. The line of sight that the management has as they put these together from a department level and on up is really the best tool, the best process, the best numbers we're going to get. You can go in and challenge some and deal with them, but to try to finagle things out of it, I just don't think it's going to be a productive process. And these people made this budget. They need to own it. They need to be held accountable for it. Accept it. Look at the total revenues. Look at the total expenses. Look at the assessment. Jigger that however you want, but make them own the line items. Because I don't think you have more insight to come up with something different.
Can I ask
Just
you
my
a
opinion.
question, Mike?
Yeah.
You made a statement at the last budget workshop. Does this pass your smell test? Does it? From
Yeah,
what you
that was my
see?
greatest line in dealing with finance.
No, but does the,
Um,
compared to the last budget
Yes.
workshop and what you see now, does this work, pass your smell test?
It does in general. There's some things with it that I still wonder about. And I'm not an accountant, okay, but I've dealt with it a lot and I am educated as an accountant. Roger had a format that was done that was using our old format that dealt with contra assets and so on last Friday, and we all looked at that. And then they went a different direction over the weekend, and I saw the thing yesterday afternoon. That's okay. I think what you've got still works, but there's some cosmetic things in there such that we don't even have a real total revenue number. I think we need to stick in a gross revenue number. Then whatever we decide to do with these deductions, we have a net revenue number then at that other line, Roger. There's a couple of things I'd like to see cleaned up that I think will be good for audit purposes and good for readership. Because right now we're taking revenue out and just deducting it like it never occurred. Well, you can't do that. When you have a revenue section, you have to report all your sales. You can't just pull sales out. But we can show gross sales, and then we can say these are the deductions, the capital allocation, the replenishment fund, and the apartment fees. These are the deductions to that. Here's our net revenue number. So it's a little more transparent. So there's a couple of those things to do.
Okay, Bill?
I just want to add, and I agree with everything Mike said. But as far as the exercise go, we can't solve our problems. The number that we have to solve is too big because most of the big numbers are fixed costs. We cannot, and we can challenge whether you got one maintenance guy too many, but that, we get rid of them. It's a $30,000 savings. I don't even know what they get paid at an individual level, but it's, you know, the big ticket items are what they are, and we have no real ability
Yeah,
to
it's a
change.
$5.2 million budget, and so most of it is not there. Well,
Maybe we could pick away $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, but it doesn't solve the problem.
All right, so I'm going to go back to where I was. Cindy, are you willing to go forward on the 28th to consider the budget that is what we're saying, a $1,160 and a $540,000 apartment recreation fee moving into the operating fund?
I do, but I also want to go through the exercise. Even if we don't change something, I think it's important that we all understand.
Okay, all right, I got that.
And people.
Okay, good. Celia, you're good with that? Bill? Okay, I am too. So the direction to management is that that's the budget that will be placed in front of us on the 28th, subject to what we're about to do now, which will be the look at particular items within this budget. Any other comments, questions? Matt, did you want
I'll just say, in terms of things that I sense could be uncertainties in our budget would be, well, I'm happy, Cindy, that the real estate people are still confident we're gonna sell a lot of homes in Celebration. Every day you read in the paper and economic journals about how there's a major real estate recession. I expect it to hit us a little bit here, and even though we still have New Yorkers and Midwesterners wanting to leave and come to Celebration in Florida in general, I'm just a little worried that enthusiasm get later into 23 may calm down, and some of the money that we hope to collect from the sales or resales of homes may soften. So I wouldn't want to take anything other than the middle road, you know, the A, which was originally came from my idea, was so that we have a cushion, still increasing at the rate of inflation, and have a cushion without shocking the residents overall by going up 16%, right? But the surprise could be from a revenue source, not that we're not correctly counting for payroll and fringe benefits and landscapers. I don't think you're gonna get any shocks from that. The shock will be some revenue number fails.
Yeah, and we don't have any control really.
And we have zero control over
So
that.
the only thing we can talk about here is the expense side, really.
Exactly.
Trying to balance to this $5.2 million number.
Yeah, and that would be, you know, renegotiating landscape contracts,
All right,
headcount,
well,
those are the kind of things you could do, but
All right, so what I'd
no
like
one's
to do,
suggesting that.
so what I'd like to do,
Jackson, before you start, 5.2 million, where are you getting that number from?
the budget,
The assess, that, he's
5.
looking at the assessment
That's just
rather
the
than total
assessment.
expenses.
The total.
That's for 2022.
No, he said the full rate, revenue is $5,250,000.
For assessments.
That's just the assessment number that's coming in, that's not all.
That's all.
Your
Okay.
total.
Yeah, you want to get into
expenses
your
is-
financial statement.
It's really a $6.1 million budget, would be more appropriate.
The blue column.
Okay, so we're dealing with 6.157, all right, I stand corrected. Thank you, I only run a multi-million-dollar company. All right, so now, so we're at 6.1 million, thank you, appreciate it. What I'd like to do is start with the executive summary, since those are the biggest items, and just talk about those and see if we need to make revisions. And I want to start with the insurance number, and Lauren, why don't you talk about insurance, because you got some concerns about it.
I have a quick question. Does the changing of 5.25 to 6 million change the percentage increase?
No, you just put the wrong number.
No, I just had the wrong number.
Okay, thanks.
So Lou Byron's latest email that I shared with Roger said he was seeing a 20% increase across the board with his HOAs. My only concern with the 20% number is we've had 3 legal filings this year, which will impact our rates, and the pickleball project potential will impact our rates as well. So I just want you to be aware of those impacts on your insurance rates in terms of calculating that percentage increase if you want to adjust that at all.
Well, what would your proposal be?
I don't specifically have a proposal because again, Lou is giving us this 20 to 40% increase rate, but I think going at the 20 at the bottom rate is a little bit risky.
It's your budget. I think you got to tell us what number you want.
I would say at least 25%, if not 30.
What would that mean in real dollars, Roger?
I'm calculating it right now.
Another $30,000.
I went through and I numbered all these pages just on my own, which might be helpful as we're going forward, so somebody could say, where is that? You could say page 4.
Sure.
While he's calculating that.
So we've got a question about the insurance number.
So 30% increase to 68,000 over last year's budget.
A 30% increase?
And that just changed it to 8.89% increase. No, sorry, 9% increase. 9.18, so we just jumped up a couple dollars.
And I guess that's why Cindy was saying what she was saying about leaving it at C and going up. Correct?
Yeah.
It is what it is, so. So now we're,
Roger, what's the dollar number in there right now, the original?
277,005. That's a 20% increase. And Lou is saying between 20 and 40 is what you
Yeah,
said?
a 30% increase
Just split the difference.
changes it to 297,896.
We recommended 300,000. We go back to the schedule.
Yeah.
We put together
Yeah.
the finance committee after the 20 to 45 and lose numbers and all that. We recommended for 2023, 300,000, a 31% increase. Now that, don't think about the increase because that was probably before we had the projected number and all the other stuff. It was a $300,000 raw number.
Okay. Is there any objection to using the $300,000 raw number? David?
31%.
Yeah, I took a front,
Yeah,
and he says that
I'd follow,
Lou gives a higher number.
I'd follow,
But he's so.
Hold on 1 second. David, go ahead.
I was gonna say that. when
I
talked
follow
to
the lead of the,
David, I can't hear you.
yeah. I'd follow the lead of the finance committee, 31%. And if the rate doesn't come in that's helpful to the budget. Budget at the higher level, 31%.
Don't think of the 31% because that's off the base that wasn't accurate. So
Right.
whatever you think percentage wise, more in
That's-
dollars,
So $300,000.
Right, yes.
Okay.
at least for the site.
I agree with Mike's point.
Jim, any comment?
I didn't dive down enough to know that it went from 30 as Brian originally proposed to 20. So I'm comfortable. I'm more comfortable with 30.
Okay. Is there any objection in the room to the 300,000? All right, let's make that change. Next item,
And excuse me, and that moved it to what?
31% moves it to 9.22% increase.
the next big variant is total compensation. That is up by $400,000 in 2023's projected budget over 2022. Any comments? Lauren, you want to talk about that?
So that contemplates new staff for Island Village coming on in the fourth quarter. It contemplates an additional maintenance person. That maintenance person would be focused mainly on pressure washing of the amenities, which would overarchingly save you money, because we cut out of this budget having professional outside vendors come in to do power washing of our major buildings and just assigning an in-house person. So their salary benefits burden and salary load is less for the year than to contract for a twice a year power washing of all our major buildings.
Cindy, what page would we find this on? Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. Anyone?
Well, it's either on page 5 or that's because maintenance, does that go with CROA or?
Yeah, that's facility
Okay, so it's
maintenance.
page 5 at the very bottom.
Well, this is on the CJC budget, so I think it's page,
I thought Lauren just said CROA.
yeah, it's, you're right.
In here. No. Fund committee, the last 2 pages, or the last single page. So then what?
No, it's here. Where is it?
There's no.
I want to point out one thing about moving these apartment recreation fees over. Under the legal agreement that we've signed, those fees can only be used for recreational amenities or upkeep or maintenance or staff, which means that we can do everything we talked about, but we have to do an audit trail that connects those dollars and says they're being used for recreational staff, recreational maintenance, and so on. Now, we can use up, I'm pretty sure we can use up the full amount of that within our budget, correct, Roger? Okay. But just so everybody follows, I think you're gonna have to do an audit at the end of the year and say, did those dollars from the recreation, the apartment fees, did those get paid over into the right place? Because we have a legal agreement signed in the charter that says that's where the dollars can be used. It doesn't say you can blow them up and use them any place you want.
As part of that formula for preparing what the large number is and what each department, part of that formula is
Right.
landscape
It's almost
management,
right.
replacement reserve
Okay.
allocations,
So
rec and maintenance staff, and
right,
yeah.
I'm just saying, from an accounting standpoint at Grand Manors, to Don and others, you cannot just take those dollars and drop them into the account, into the checking account, and say they can be used fungibly any place you want. They have to be tied to these specific items, which
And I'll just add one thing. I don't think we should wait till the end of the year.
That's fine.
I think we should do it twice a year. So in the summertime, after the June numbers are closed in a normal cycle, we should do it then and make sure we're okay. And then at the end of the year. And that's something I'll say we, the finance committee, could do. We're not gonna wait for the outside auditors to do.
Okay, I'm not, I just want to be clear that that's one of our concerns.
Lauren pointed out, you've got the schedule with the accounts that are the allocation of
Yes.
numbers.
Yes,
And we're only allocating 25% of those numbers to the
correct.
departments. So you have 75%. You got 75% wiggle room. So you are more than covered from an audit standpoint.
Sorry, it's just,
But we'll just document it.
you know how you're conservative fiscally? I'm conservative legally. I just want to
No,
make sure
and
that
we'll document
we're
it.
not violating an agreement that would
Management
then
and the
put
committee.
those dollars at risk. Okay, so to come back to compensation, any questions or comments, Cindy?
So this kind of came up yesterday when Roger and I were talking, Stephanie. The new amenity, the new clubhouse at Island Village is beautiful, just beautiful inside. Celia took pictures and shared them. Have we thought at all about having to staff that in some way? And is that included in this here?
So that contemplates, so this number contemplates, in terms of new positions, a new inspector starting in Q4, a communication specialist for the communications implementation plan, a new, that starts at the beginning of the year, a new maintenance tech that starts at the beginning of the year, and that's more the pressure washing piece, a new maintenance tech that starts in Q4, that's contemplated for Island Village for that amenity center, a new park and pool coordinator that starts at the beginning of the year, and a new park and pool coordinator that starts in Q4. So that Q4 is contemplated for Island Village, and part of that additional full-time one would probably be out there as well.
What's the communication person we're hiring?
So the Communications Advisory Group, in their recommendation, recommended hiring a communications specialist position to improve and enhance the ability of the association to,
How much is that?
it's about, well, just their base salary alone is 54 to 55 a year.
So that was just based on a recommendation.
Yes.
So do we need a communication person? I think communication's been going, I don't know.
We had one years ago. We had a communications person, we had a parks and recreation person. And then at some point, somebody decided, well, these two people can do all this work by themselves, which I think has never been worked out the same.
Right. The communication implementation team is working on making recommendations. I think if it's in the budget, we can discuss it. And then we can say, yes, we want it, no, we don't want it. But I think from a budgeting standpoint, it's part of the conversation. So I'm inclined to say you go with that. I don't see any change. Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Well, it's all part of the proposal.
It is, right. Right. So there you go. All right.
This is 4% in the notation, Roger.
I'm sorry, what do we look at?
I'm looking at the notes next to total compensation. What's that 4%?
That the built in the budget is, it contemplates the 4% increase in payroll for 2023. It gives us money for staff increases.
So what's 33 then?
Over the previous year.
The 33 is the variance percentage over the 2022 projected.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
We good?
So
Any other questions?
question. Yeah, two things. One is that 4%, Roger, overall budget, or is that saying 4% for each employee?
I think I calculated. I think I calculated to assume each employee would get 4%.
Okay, so so the point on communication, that's another new staff, Island Village and communication. And I think to Jackson's point, that's came out strongly from the communications advisory group, and that's what the implementation team's working on now. We have that in the budget, and should there be a decision later to make that less or not approve that, then that's another savings. But put it in the budget for now. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
That 4% is merit increases.
Yes.
Merit increase.
Oh, okay, now.
For
Okay,
existing
that's
staff.
that was my question.
And the
Thank you, Cindy.
33%, and the 33% includes the people that are being hired.
Yes.
Okay. Good, thank you. Let's move on, unless there's other comments about that, and go to the landscape maintenance.
That's purely contractual and based on your existing contracts.
And as we've already pointed out, we anticipate bidding at least one of those landscape maintenance.
So the landscape maintenance budget proposes existing contracts for all the service areas and then estimates for repairs, landscape repairs.
Does this include infrastructure?
No.
There's, or not, well, irrigation
Irrigation.
repairs.
Irrigations was a separate line item.
Irrigation is a separate line item. Okay, all right. Well, let me, rather than going down line by line, is there anything else on this executive summary that any board member wants to call attention to or discuss?
If you give me a second.
Yeah, sure, take your time.
I'm looking for, oh, here it is, landscape. So one of the things that popped out, the majority of the stuff is
What page are you
contractual.
on?
I'm sorry, page 2, about the biddle.
Okay,
So mostly it's contractual, which you may or may not change depending on what you do. But one thing that popped out at me was this $80,000 for mulch. So I found out that that's there because this existing contract does not include mulch. So the first thing I thought of was maybe we can do pine straw. They'll cut $40,000 out of that.
That's an ARC application for every CROA park. But switching from mulch to pine straw.
Well,
and what does it save us if we go to bark versus mulch? We go from 80,000 to
my
some rounding error.
my guy at home who has a license says it's about half of the expense.
So instead of 80,000, it's 40,000.
Mhm. But, and that they also be included in the new.
So if we ask management to look for cost savings in these items, right? We've got a high end at mulch. We know that maybe we could go lower. Yes?
This was, yeah, this was rounded down already
Okay.
from the estimates that we got from our contractors right now. Was about $100,000. We cut off $20,000. This is contemplating putting new mulch in the parks and all CROA properties twice a year. So at $40,000 twice a year.
Well, but then on the other hand, isn't pine straw, wouldn't that help some of your erosion issues that you're having with wood chips?
Like the pine straw wash away in a rainstorm like mulch does?
No.
We got pine straw washes.
Go ahead.
Probably the expert, Gary Huffman, but are you saying that there is a park or design guideline for CROA parks to have mulch, pine, some sort of special mulch?
Just mulch in particular, not, that's what I've been.
Yeah, I've read that too, Gary.
Do you remember where you read that? Because
No,
the
long
design
time ago.
guidelines are for homeowners. For CROA properties, parks, outside the building here and all that, it is whatever you put in the contract. And as you know, I can't think of a design guideline which dictates what CROA properties should use for mulch.
Yeah, I can't either.
No, I don't think it's in there. I think what the practice has been previously is
Right.
conforming CROA properties to the residential design guidelines to maintain that level. of
Right, so
appearance.
I'm saying celebration in general, it's pine bark mulch and you leave it up. But in Spring Lake, it's hard mulch, shredded mulch, because that's in the contract.
Mhm.
But it's not in the supplemental guidelines. If you look at the supplemental guidelines for all the service areas, it doesn't say specifically you have to use a certain kind of mulch.
Well, could we, for the purposes of our budget, could we leave this line item where it is with a direction to management to try and find cost savings in the contract?
I think you can,
Would that be reasonable?
yeah, but I don't think there's a
No, I agree. I don't think there is something.
precedence maybe, but not a requirement.
Jackson,
Yes.
I've got something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're looking at these numbers, you're looking at the percentages, and I think you've got a problem.
Oh, great.
It's not a problem, it's just the way they're equated, so you need to look at the dollars, not the percentages.
Okay.
It appears that the 2022 projected numbers that you're looking at in that column, see that? Roger, I think you pulled those from the 7 months actual as opposed to the approved budget. Or the 12 months projected, I'm sorry.
So I see a column for 7 months actual, 12 months projected.
It should be the 12 months.
Oh,
projected.
yeah.
They'll pull them off from the wrong column. So when you look at these big percentages, they're not accurate. So you're looking at something that's not,
Okay.
your hair is on fire on those items to 300%. That, Cindy, to your point, does that pass my smell test? No, then we'd have 130% landscape, and I was trying to find what the issue was. We got the wrong column in there, so that's what did it.
So this projected column is off 7 months, not 12, is what you're saying?
Correct. And you've got the 12 months if you go back into the detail, it's just that highlight, the far right column.
All right, let me get that corrected for us.
I'm doing it right now, we'll reprint it.
All right. Let me ask the board if there are other line items that you want to discuss. I mean, we could, not that I'm not enjoying having free lunch here, but what would you like to discuss?
Jackson,
Yes, David, go ahead.
Jackson.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
to the larger question on the, I guess it's the summary sheet. The big jump I see, and taking that comment about 7 months versus 12, safety and security going up, safety and security going up a lot. What is driving that?
That's your new Lakeside CCFC Spring Park Security Company contract.
So it's
That's $107,000 of that.
so if we were having that contract in time, just as it is right now for all of 2022, is it about that amount? Around 100, 114?
Yes.
Okay.
So the contract's $107,000, and then the remainder is the fire panels and lines
Okay.
at the amenities.
So basically, we can't
Okay.
use this summary right now. It's not really,
And you're gonna get a new one right now.
okay.
So it's not $40,000 this year.
No, safety and security put up $43,000 and 60%.
Here, I'm reprinting it right now.
Okay.
And
71.
that's consistent. Yeah, I was remembering landscape. I was remembering landscape before we did the tie-in with New Leaf and Exquisite at about 800,000 to 900,000 a year.
Okay, good. Thank you,
So
David.
what you
I
said,
appreciate it.
that makes sense.
Okay. Let me turn it, any other line items that anybody wants to talk about? Celia, what do you got? Nothing? Cindy?
Well, in case anybody's looking at the water and reclaimed water,
Yes.
it's my understanding that what's happened here is that as they were going through all the parks and amenities,
Yeah.
there were a lot of irrigation issues. Either there were leaks.
Matt, sorry, my hearing aid picks up you better than Cindy.
I can talk louder.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
That's another thing. Where was that? What was it? Where was
You're talking about
it?
reclaimed
Oh,
water.
yeah, so they had problems with leaks. They had problems with leaks like at pools and stuff like that.
Right.
They had problems with irrigation spigots not working. So in addition to the increase that we usually get from the ECD, there's also that we're now spending more water. So hopefully the soil won't die. So that's why that number has.
So we
jumped
do
up so
have,
much.
I think, in terms of long-term projected projects, to talk about changing the controllers and the irrigation systems, right? Mike, am I correct?
Yes, the technology committee's been working on some thoughts and some options, and Jose and I and Natalie have been talking about
Okay,
that.
all right, so that's on there. What else? I can't see Jim or David, you're stuck on the screen, so
Here's
if you want to talk, just go.
I have a different question. Again, on the summary, where it says other 3.4 million, that's the last line before subtotal.
Yeah.
That location, it says sum total of all other expenses. Where are those other expenses? Is that CROA and CJC combined? Where
That's
are
everything
those
else.
other expenses items?
That's everything
Okay.
else on the budget sheet. Like, for instance, if you look under this pro budget here, it doesn't say anything about
Yeah.
pools. That's part of that big number at the bottom.
It's pools,
Yeah.
Anything that's on the expense in the categories, that's not one of
Okay.
these that jumped out at Roger, is part of that big
Okay.
number. So like
Okay.
pool, for example, it's not there.
Yeah, it's like all in that blue. Okay, makes sense. All in the blue column.
Yeah, maintenance, just regular maintenance at the facilities, that's not in there, would be included in that big number.
All your
Janitorial supplies is there. But anything that's not listed here, but is on this, is the other.
So then I have a different question. As we're looking at a lot of those other expenses, and I'm specifically looking at the things like where it starts with Aloha event, annual meeting, all that, 4th of July, Founder's Day, and all that, Mother's Son. So my question is, what is new here that has not been there before? And what was there before that is not listed here? In other words, is there something that we funded in the past, even through 2021, 2022, that is not now included? And is there something new that has not previously been included?
Well,
Just at the high
just looking
level.
at- just looking at it, when I was looking at it, there's a mother-son
Right, that's new.
thing, that's new. There's a pay to play line, that's new. Hush Cooch is in here, but I think there's.
The Glow Party, I think the Glow Party is new, or was done last year.
The Glow Party is new,
Okay.
Where is Glow Party?
about a third of the way down.
Right under Founder's Day.
It's in alphabetical order.
Do you want to make changes to any of those items?
No, it was just, I don't know what's missing. It's not like a red line.
Yeah.
I saw
You're
it.
looking in the red, not in the expenditures.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, I was looking at expenditure. I was
Yeah.
looking
I
under
was
expenditures.
the last cost. Yeah.
Where am I finding it?
Here. It's on page 4, Glow Party under Founders
So
Day.
the new items in lifestyles are a glow party, the mother-son event. In the kids' night out, we've added 2 teen nights on top of the 2 younger children's nights, and then there's a pay-to-play item that's added.
Okay.
The proposal, the kids' night out and pay-to-play are proposed as a net zero or hopefully a positive. Mother or father-daughter traditionally is a revenue generator, so their hope is that mother-son would be as well.
Mostly everything is revenue
Yeah,
generated.
I mean, I think the reality here is that when you've done a bottom-up budget, there's not a lot to move here. And so unless there's something that is just a drop dead, I've got to deal with this issue and put it up here, I think our work is relatively done for today and we're ready to move to the 28th. But if I'm missing something, please help me out here from the audience or from the board. I just don't know that, we're talking about rounding errors and things that probably are more management issues than board issues conceptually. Am I missing something?
I can make a comment.
Please.
I think I can do it again later. Roger's gonna have the other sheet, but I sent Lauren a note earlier today, and I know she's been busy.
Okay.
Or when did I send this, Lauren? Yesterday, Monday.
Yes.
So Lauren's got this. These are the areas that I saw that didn't pass my smell test, Celia. So, and this was compared to the projection. And I'm making the assumption the projection for 2022 is good. And then what the budget is.
Okay.
So pools, for whatever reason, are down 25%. That didn't make a lot of sense to me that our pools were going to be down 25%, but somebody should be able to answer the question, why would our pools be down 25%?
Because you weren't here earlier when I mentioned that we had put all the pool expenses in one bucket. This, for 2023, we're contemplating separating out the repairs from the
So it's a
service.
reclass. You're reclassing, so that's causing the issue. Good, that's all you need.
So we don't anticipate having as many repairs next year.
Okay, that's perfect for that one. Repair and maintenance shows is down 49%.
That's reclassing as well.
That's reclass? Good. Janitorial supplies are up 43%.
That's mostly repair and maintenance reclassing.
Going in there reclassing, okay? Good. Fields, you're gonna spend $20,000 on refurbishment.
We do that annually. It just wasn't accounted for in the 2022 budget because the board wasn't aware that we do that
Good.
regularly.
Trash is up 19%. Anybody have an issue with that? The projection's probably off. a
We
little bit.
confirm, Cindy and I confirmed that with the vendor.
Got it. Water's gonna be down 11%. I found that a little mystical.
Well, so that we took into account water leaks that we've had this year. And we also took into account that we had sprinkler heads that weren't working that are gonna work in
So you believe it's a good number.
Yeah.
You got some logic behind it,
Yeah.
okay? Professional fees, I think I know the answer to this one, but they're down 44%.
Some of the consulting expenses we won't.
Very
have
much
next year.
less, right? Yeah, so I figured that. The HOA activities that David was talking about are down 15%, but that's primarily due to the $75,000 that was spent on the 4th of July this year. I thought it was 50, and now I'm seeing in the document 75. So that accounts for almost all the
Well,
change now.
we're putting money back in from
So
CTE.
there's some drop because in prior years you had a very large Founder's Day in 21. You had a very large 4th of July.
That's
this
good
year
enough. You
than
got
previous
reason.
years,
So
yeah.
it's well reasoned. Okay, good. Last one was administrative is down 83.9%. Is that a reclass of some sort?
There's some administrative, but I think there were some attempted cost savings there as well.
What is administrative? Are we just talking general staff?
Whoever falls into that bucket, Lauren, you know.
It was like,
It's by budget. It's your cost of goods sold for logo store, your keys, it's your,
Rental for the storage units that we have.
yeah, your
Okay,
storage.
so it's a potpourri, right? It's a,
You own a bunch of inventory, right?
I do, yeah.
That's what it is. It's your expenses of the inventory that you're not gonna have next year. So you're not accounting for it as a perpetual inventory. You just took it as a cost of goods sold right away. Bang.
okay,
That's what it is.
all right.
Explains it.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, Celia?
Okay, so, under the homeowner activities, Founder's Day.
Hold on, you're gonna have to speak up or go into the mic. I can't hear you.
Founder's Day last year was, let's round it up, $61,000, because it was our 25th anniversary. Founder's Day this year, $55,850.
That's what you budgeted for me.
And the Glow Party for 2023 is part of what? The 2023, where's the Glow Party come into play?
It's just a new event
It's a new event?
Yeah.
We're having the Glow Party at Founder's Day this year.
this year, yeah.
So shouldn't that be part of Founder's Day? instead
No,
of-
I think she's doing it separately from Founder's Day next year.
Okay. And what's pay play again?
We need seed money to do smaller events where like a wine and cheese pairing that you're doing.
Like
so we
the
could-
ice cream truck?
Like the,
and all that?
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Any other, Jim or David? Hi, guys.
I do not have anything else.
Okay, David?
Yeah, just one minor thing, a very end of the CROA budget. What is it that includes 15% labor rate? What facility maintenance staff, onsite compensation, and rec staff? What is 15? What does that mean?
The payroll taxes.
How is that?
It's burden.
Okay,
It's
okay.
burden
Oh,
rate.
it's the
burden.
it's the bird. Okay.
You guys
And
call it
what's that
burden rate, I call it labor rate, so I'll change it so it more mirrors how you guys are used to it.
But we didn't. But I didn't see that anywhere else. What
Should be up in the management.
is it buried? Is it buried under the management
Oh.
elsewhere?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yep.
It was just.
Uh,
It was just inconsistent.
So David, in the compensation line, those are just the base salaries. In the management fee line, that's in CROA, that's the burden rate, the labor rate, and benefits. And in CJC, the management fee line is the burden rate, the labor rate, benefits, and the $108,000 of the management fee. And then down at the bottom in CJC, you just have, again, the CJC staff base salaries.
And David, you'll remember that we negotiated a reduced burden rate for the first
Right.
3 years.
Right. I
David,
remember
I'm gonna
that.
remove the burden, I'm gonna remove the note under the compensation, it shouldn't have been there.
Okay,
Okay,
that's helpful. This is all very helpful. Thank you.
all right. Charles Richards, go ahead. Richard?
Yeah, sorry, I going. Oh, can you hear me?
He's everywhere.
Go ahead.
I can't remember if it was a couple meetings ago or if it was mentioned in this meeting and I had to step out. So was there a discussion about the communications person? And then I believe there was replacing maintenance headcount with the communication. Was that, or did I hear that incorrectly?
No, the communications person is currently in the budget. There's a maintenance tech person currently in the budget, a parks and pool monitor currently in the budget, and then 3 other positions that are contemplated for Q4 that have to do with Island Village.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay. All right. At this point, then.
I'm going to raise one more question, if I may. Sorry. Under CROA, right at the top, under assessment allocation, that $1 million for the proposed budget for replacement allocation.
That's replacement reserves.
So, okay, so that is in there. And then that capital improvement allocation, what help me on those two? There's two.
The capital improvement allocation is the apartment rec, it's half of the apartment rec fee.
Okay, what we talked about early on.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
All
okay,
right,
got it.
so-
No, I get it now. Thank you.
All right. So with that, what I'm going to say is that on September 28th, this budget, as we've discussed it, will be proposed to the board for approval and sending out to the residents as required under the charter. We still need to do a 3-year budget. I'm going to ask the finance committee, working with our treasurer and management, to create that 3-year budget. In addition to this, we have, Celia, I just want to make sure you're tracking here. We also have service area budgets, and the service areas, we'll come to that in just a minute, but what we've got here on this budget is the 28. This budget would come before this board for a final up or down decision and any further modifications at that point. Is everybody on the board in agreement with that plan of action?
So it's gonna be
Yeah.
8.70% or 9%?
Well, it's going to be whatever that
9.22.
option was after we recalculated these numbers.
Is it
9.22.
9.12?
9.22.
22, okay, thanks.
What's the dollar?
It's still the same dollars.
11.66.
Okay, still the same dollars. I understand that we get really excited about percentages. I would still prefer that we talk about dollars. People have to pay dollars, not percentages. So that's my thought. All right, any objection to that as the process that we're going to follow? Hearing
No,
none, am I seeing line? David, Jim? Okay.
Yeah, sounds
Then
good.
I want to talk very briefly before we adjourn about service area budgets, because that's a big issue. What we agreed to do was to ask management to meet with service areas that had executive committees to discuss their budgets. We have offered them dates to meet all of this week and into next week. I think some of the public social media chatter that they were asked to come to a meeting this morning is inaccurate, obviously. But we are under the same deadlines to produce their budgets and send them out by the end of the month. So that's the reason that we're pushing that. For the service areas without executive committees, refresh my recollection. What did we say?
You guys are meeting on Friday.
Oh, we're meeting this Friday. That's right. Gosh, another meeting. So we're going to talk about those service areas this Friday at noon, and we will discuss that. The service areas with executive committees will meet with management to discuss what their circumstances are, make any modifications, changes, suggestions to us. Everybody good on that? Okay. Any other? Yes, Cindy.
This question,
Yeah.
procedural management kind of thing. Have you given any thought to what you're going to actually mail to the residents?
I'm working on a draft to give you guys on Wednesday, based on previous templates that you've used, but I'm modifying it a little bit.
Gotcha.
Good, thanks. Again, I want to thank the Finance Committee. I want to thank Cindy and Bill and management, Roger in particular, Dawn, Lauren, her staff. This is a huge job, challenging under the circumstances that we've been put under. But I think we're making progress, and I appreciate the quality of the discussion today and the ability to talk through these policy issues.
It's the best reckoning we've ever had.
Yeah, there you go. Paul Raskin.
The best what?
Reckoning we've ever had.
There you go. Paul Raskin, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, my service area was given the same kind of notice as the others were about meetings either this week or on Monday. We elected Monday only to find out now we're told that's booked. So we can't really have a meeting according to Rossi unless they'll send us a copy of the budget and we can talk about it privately. And I'm prepared to tell you right now, we're about to invoke the charter, which demands a meeting on behalf of the service areas. And we will do that. And if we do not get a copy of this budget, we're going to be objecting to the budget, which will prevent you from having a budget for our service area and requiring you to go by last year's budget. This is just nonsense. We have been waiting for our budget for well over a month. I was told that what I saw last has been modified, but I have not seen the modification. And it's intolerable to tell us on short notice to have a meeting. And when we can all finally get together on the Monday we were told to meet, we're now told those dates and times are all booked. And
okay, Paul,
we're prepared to, we're prepared to play the hardball that you're playing with us.
Oh, you don't need to. Paul, just stop for a minute. Let me speak. Lauren has just told me she'll get you the meeting on Monday, okay?
Well, the meeting on Monday is great. I've been asking for a copy of the budget for the last month. And specifically, I've now asked twice this week for a copy of our proposed budget. Is there some difficulty on why we can't be receiving that in advance so we know what we're looking at before the meeting occurs?
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. You're entitled to all of that. You'll have your meeting on Monday. You know how to reach me individually. Let me know if you don't get it, okay?
Well, we were given 3 possible times, 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. 2 of our members immediately, by the way, responded immediately to what we
We're
received.
gonna get it fixed, Paul.
For 3 o'clock.
Paul,
So when is the
Paul,
meeting?
we're gonna get it fixed. Just bring it down a notch. We're gonna get it fixed, okay? You'll have the meeting on Monday and you'll get your budgets today.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you very much. And
Thank you, Paul.
as far as
I
the
appreciate
meeting went, as far as this
Uh-huh.
meeting went, I thought it was very productive, but I do think that the service areas are getting second shrift here.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And we're trying our best to catch up now under this circumstance and get your budgets to you. We want your executive committees, all of them, to weigh in. So we'll do whatever it takes to get that input and be able to work reasonably with you. So there's no attempt to put you into a second-class status, okay?
So we can assume then, and I can advise the other committee members, it will be Monday. And will someone
Absolutely.
be telling us shortly what time on Monday?
Yes, Lauren is typing as I sit here right now, okay?
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here. Thank you in the audience. Thank you for your assistance.
Lauren?
We will
Yes,
see
ma'am.
you on whatever the next meeting is.
I feel old.
Sorry, it's happening.
Can you send me an
Bye,
invite to
everyone.
those?
When I get them in my calendar, I'll forward them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.